Hey friends, it's Haylini here and I'm back with another video. 2022 is almost upon us and right now is probably that time where every second reel that you scroll on Instagram is a 2021 recap. No shame because I actually did one as well recently. A new year means a self-imposed chance to renew and reset your goals. I mean, technically you should be able to reset your goals or set your goals whenever you want. It shouldn't take a specific day, but something about Jan 1 just hits different. Taking the time to really sit down, think about your goals, and intentionally write them down is an amazing experience. And in fact, you are 42% more likely to achieve the goals that you write down because it forces you to think more critically about them and motivates you to action. So Lucas and I took some time at home yesterday to go through a brainstorming activity that allowed us to crystallize, prioritize, and track our goals for next year. And I thought I would just share that process with you all and take you through it so that you can all try it too, because I found it was a really helpful way to thoughtfully come up with some New Year's resolutions. I just want to remind you all, as we do think about goals, to be forgiving on yourselves. I'm sure we've all had those experiences where we've set some New Year's resolutions, we work at it for a week or something, and then we kind of just give up and let it die. And it can be really sad, but maybe those just weren't the right goals to begin with. So I think the most important thing in order to really achieve goals is you have to think about what is the reason that drove you to want to achieve that thing in the first place and use that consistently as your motivator. So let's get into the step-by-step of this goal brainstorming process. Hot tip before we begin: if you are able to do this activity with a friend, a sibling, or a partner, I think it becomes a lot more effective in order to stay accountable, but also to discuss and build depth as you do set your goals. Alright, so the first step of this process is to brainstorm all the different categories or the aspects pertaining to your life. Basically, this is if you were to break your life down into all its different parts, what would those things be? Examples being your career, your family life, all those sorts of things that may matter to you. Remember, the thing about brainstorming is that you want to generate as many ideas as possible, so don't worry too much about whether those are valid categories or whether they're messy or not, because you will then go through and refine those thoughts in a bit. For those who want to speed up this process or are maybe doing this by themselves, here is the list that Lucas and I came up with. Now, after you have this list, the second step is to start prioritizing. Spend about 5 minutes just going through that list and ranking them 1 to however many items that you have, based on what you want to focus most on in the next year. So know that this isn't what is most important to you, because I think for most of us it's safe to assume that family is probably the most important thing, but this is actually what do you want to focus on for the next year. Note that though sometimes these things may overlap. Prioritization itself is really important because it then helps you understand where to focus most, especially when it feels like you are feeling overwhelmed, you have so many things to do at once. You can kind of come back to these goals and figure out, okay, what's the most important thing for you to contribute to one of your top goals. You may go through a couple of iterations of this, and this is why it's really helpful to do on paper. Now, the next step is the big chunky step. You want to allocate about 20 to 30 minutes to do this, and this is take your top 3 goals that you've ranked in the list and put them in a table that is broken down by goal, habits, and projects. So by these 3 columns, a goal should be something that you want to achieve within the next year. So that's the constraint. It should be attainable, it should be measurable. Check out SMART goals online if you want more of a framework for how you should be coming up with these goals. It is important to recognize the difference between a goal and an aspiration. A goal is something that is more achievable, that you can measure and say, yes, I succeeded or I did not succeed in doing this thing. Whereas an aspiration is a little bit more fuzzy and less constrained to a time period and can feel a lot more ambiguous. So an example of the difference might be in the career category. I may have an aspiration to become a highly recognized top product manager in the industry. Whereas something that is more tangible to reach that may be like, my goal in the next year is to take the next step up in my career path, whether that is a promotion or to move to a higher position in a different company. So that is the difference between a goal and an aspiration, and you really want to be setting the goal here. Habits are smaller, recurring things that you build into your life routine. These will help you work consistently towards your goal. Just remember to try to be ruthless on these as well, because it can be very difficult to build a habit. And when you have like multiple habits to build into your life, it's just not very realistic, knowing that, it takes on average 66 days for someone to actually form a habit successfully. And then lastly, projects are bigger kind of solo chunks of work that you can actually do to work towards your goal. In this case, projects kind of have outputs or like some kind of end result, and then the goal is ultimately the outcome of that. It's important that when you are setting goals to also consider what habits and projects you are creating alongside them. These will help you take smaller steps that are more tangible towards your goal and make it feel less overwhelming. So to give you an example of one of my goals, creative passion was one of my top ranked categories for next year. The goal itself was to launch and grow a side passion project in 2022. Habits to do such may be things like keeping up with my weekly YouTube videos, maybe a 30-minute brainstorming reflection period every week where I just come up with different ideas. Projects-wise, I recently kind of am leveraging my newly discovered creative passion in sewing, and I created an Instagram page called Made by Linny to share some of my pieces. Maybe investing some more time into doing that over the next year will kind of help me attain what I'm striving for. Then for the rest of your categories that you have, which aren't in the top 3, you can spend a little bit of time just to jot down some smaller things that you may want to achieve for each of those, just so that you are recognizing them. But I wouldn't spend too much time here because it is really important to be ruthless and prioritize so you know where you focus your time. After you have brainstormed and kind of refined these, you can then take them and put them into whatever goal setting tool or tracker of your choice, whether that is on paper through bullet journaling or digitally through like goal setting tools like To-Do Monday.com, Trello. For Lucas and I, we're using Team Central, which is actually the software that I'm building at work. It is meant for team-to-team comms within an organization, but what we're doing is just taking it and adapting it in a way that we can use it as kind of like a single player household. By the way, this is not an ad or sponsored or anything like that, but I just think the helpful thing about it is it does send reminders for like projects that you're working on a weekly basis, and it sends reminders to update your goals on a monthly basis. So it makes it a bit more difficult to forget about those things, and it helps you really stay on track in terms of reflecting and making sure that you are staying accountable. If you do want to use Team Central, which you totally can, it is for free, and you can just basically spin up a workspace. I will drop the link in the description below, and yeah, it's really easy. So when it comes to inputting and tracking your goals, we just did this through like the goals tab in Team Central, and we basically created each of our own different goals and then wrote in the description like what does success actually look like and what were the habits. So basically transferring some of that table into our goal tracker. Then we created a couple of projects that we'd be working on which contribute to the different goals and added them there. And then basically from here we were done. The next step that we are probably going to take is trying to make these goals a little bit more visible, whether that is by setting it as your desktop wallpaper or like printing it out and sticking it in a visible place in your study or in your bedroom so that you are constantly reminded of what you are working towards. I think we need to acknowledge that goals may change and it's totally okay to adapt them as you go throughout the year. So that was the recent process that Lucas and I went through to set our New Year's resolutions or our goals for 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it very helpful and valuable as you go through the activity yourself. I would love for you to share in the comments below, if you are comfortable sharing them, what goals you have set for yourself in 2022. As usual, if you've enjoyed this, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your friends, or Do this activity with your friends, and I will see you all next time. Bye! Smiling every day with Hayley, and Happy New Year!